And so I just think that it's so beautiful in Ayurveda how we talk about, look, you have a constitution. We're not all meant to do a particular trend that's current. Yeah, there's
Right.
science behind why bodybuilders do these things and all that, but we can't extrapolate all the what my friends are now calling bro science, all the science on men's health and weightlifting and bodybuilding and all those things, and then just say, hey, all of us need to do this. Welcome to the Fusionary Health Podcast. Today I had a special guest, Kate O'Donnell of the Everyday Ayurveda for Women's Health book series. Her whole series is called Everyday Ayurveda. She is a fellow Ayurveda practitioner, Ayurveda lover. She is a teacher of women's health and Ayurvedic cooking. So today on the podcast, we got to talk about perimenopause and menopause, how it's the perfect complement to HRT and the high protein diets and a lot of the trends and things that we are doing currently around perimenopause and menopause. We talked about women's health overall. We talked about how as we go through these transitions in life, building that thread of circadian rhythm from Ayurveda can be one of the most powerful tools that we add into our lives to build that stability and grounding that we need. So enjoy the podcast today. I have loved chatting with Kate. It's always nice to meet a kindred spirit in Ayurveda. So enjoy. Welcome. Today I have Kate O'Donnell here. We're going to dive right in. She is an Ayurvedic practitioner. She's a yogi. She is someone who has practiced and taught Ayurveda for years. And I'm so excited to dive into women's health with her today. This is her book, Everyday Ayurveda for Women's Health. This is her fifth book.
Fourth book.
Yeah. And it's so exciting to see a full-on gorgeous Ayurveda book. I was flipping through here. The pictures are just stunning. Like you want to eat right out of these beautiful photos. And I love that you are so into Ayurvedic cooking. You have a whole Ayurvedic cookbook. I feel like I've met my Ayurvedic sister out there in the world who's into everything like I am. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So Kate, will you kick us off with what led you to studying Ayurveda and loving Ayurveda the way that you do?
It was a love of India at first. Yeah, I always wanted to go to India since I was young for no apparent reason. I didn't know anything about Ayurveda. I didn't really care about yoga. I just wanted to go there. And so I went there when I was 19 in college and was teaching English. We were at Oroville, the south of Pondicherry in Chennai, sort of spiritual community based on Sri Aurobindo's teachings. So that was cool. I was really diving into the Vedic philosophy and as much as you can when you're 19. And I got so sick that first trip. I was there 6 months. I traveled a lot everywhere and I had a lot of parasites when I came home. So that started me on sort of a health journey, a digestive journey, and also a food journey, because when you have parasites, it's really hard to eat anything. Yeah. So I tried I hadn't even found Ayurveda yet. I came home and then I had to use a wide spectrum antibiotic, and even that didn't. Then I had to, I took probably 3 rounds of different drugs over the course of a year back in the States and was really sick. And as soon as I got better, it was 2 years later, I went right back to India.
Okay.
I was even more obsessed with the place than ever. Wow. Just fascinated by it. It was weird. Now we can see why, that there was some story there, but so I got back over there instantly. Everything started happening again. So obviously the parasitic infections had not cleared, and we just pressed that button and it all started up again. And that was when I ended up at an Ayurvedic clinic in Mysore. So I was in Mysore studying yoga and went to sort of my yoga teacher's family doctor because I was just kind of a mess. Sure. It was all just digestive stuff. And this doctor had me undergo a panchakarma at a small hospital there in Mysore. And I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know. They just literally put me in a rickshaw and sent me to this
Wow.
clinic, you know, and I was just kind of a mess, you know, I couldn't really do anything except what he told me to do, you know. So the doctors and nurses were teaching me, like, you know, what to do, what to cook, you know. I was getting very clear instruction about what to eat from my physician, which I thought was so cool.
Yeah.
That had never happened, you know, to me before. And it started to open me up to this idea that there was a health system out there that had a lot to do with food. And I thought that was so neat that he'd be like, oh, here's what you're going to eat this week. And he'd write down the name of some like vegetable in the local script. And I would bring the piece of paper to the vegetable vendor, and you never knew what he was going to give me. So I was learning how to prepare, you know, these medicinal foods as well.
Wow.
And that's when so I was getting into cooking.
Yeah.
And, you know, I started hanging out with my friends' moms, you know, in different places in South India and learning to cook from them. And it all came together in this way that my healing had to do with my food and my cooking, you know,
Nice.
and that Ayurveda was this ancient system, because I also felt really at odds with the changing information that I was getting in this country, in the US, about what was the efficacy of different foods.
Right.
You know, like I'd leave on a trip and avocado was bad, and I'd come back 6 months later and avocado was like good,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And I thought, I can't get on board with this. Like they keep changing what they're saying, you know, like I grew up on non-fat cheese. My mom thought that was the thing, you know, and
Skim milk.
I don't think that was the thing. Right. So I just kept digging into Ayurveda, and I had such a spiritual experience on that first Panchakarma that really changed my relationship to my body and my spirituality. And so I started reading, you know, everything that I could find about Ayurveda in India. And then when I was back here, you know, I guess started teaching yoga. I lived in Boston. It kind of went into the background, I guess, for me for a number of years, where I was still eating the food they had taught me, you know, and I was going to India and studying yoga, but it wasn't until my yoga students started having issues with food and digestion that I took upon like a formal study of Ayurveda. So it was maybe 10 years later. And that's when I went to the Kripalu School of Ayurveda. It was recommended by a well-known physician in this country. And I sort of learned in English, which was really helpful to learn from, English speaking teachers. Yeah. And instantly I had a lot of clients. There was a lot of interest. So I started teaching workshops in the city, and I started doing clinical practice plus teaching yoga. So I was really busy, really immersed in everything for probably another decade there. And, you know, it works. I kept seeing it work. Living in Boston, it's also very, you know, it's a lot of hospitals, there's a lot of medical research, you know, so there's a lot of Western medicine there. And people what I was finding was that, I don't know if you find the same, but it felt like people who weren't getting results from Western medicine, where nothing made sense, they'd come to an Ayurvedic paradigm, and I'd be like, oh, this makes total sense. You know, like I can see why you feel the way you do.
True.
And that felt like so wonderful to be able to offer this complimentary thing for folks who just were going through all the hoops and not feeling better, you know, or not understanding their condition.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's really gratifying, you know, to be in practice in a city like that. And also people, you know, weren't cooking.
Sure.
So that was how the cooking thing really took over as a big part of my teaching practice, because nobody in the city is cooking.
Right. Everyone's too busy. You're eating out. You're in a rush. It's whatever you can order in, delivery, all those things.
Yeah, exactly. So the cooking came to the forefront as like, well, if food is part of our medicinal substratum for the body, we really have to address this.
Right.
You know, and it can't always be restaurant food. That's not going to make you feel good, you know. And that was how the first cookbook was born, was really out of necessity, that I just felt like we needed something that would grab people's attention, have the beautiful photos and
Yeah.
simple recipes, you know, and also the front matter in the book is all your sort of introduction to Ayurveda and like how to set up your kitchen and learning about seasonal foods and seasonal eating.
Amazing. Amazing. We have so many parallels in our stories. I grew up, I got so sick. I was lucky enough to go to India every year or every other year of my life. And I was going to see my cousins and my grandparents, but it took till college for the health issues to really come to a head, all those digestive issues in India. So now when I go to India, I have so many laws around what I will not touch. Don't give me anything that could have touched your Indian water. No ice, nothing. I am not going to go through Montezuma's Revenge India style ever again because I did it way too many times growing up and took really crazy antibiotics. Like they just didn't think about what they were doing to us, using just the hammer and really damaging gut. So it took panchakarma to really heal me and clean out everything that had happened. And then when you do panchakarma, these Ayurvedic healing treatments, you feel so good. Like it's a level of vitality that I just have never experienced outside of those really big detoxes. And I happen to be one of those people who loves detoxing. I'm like, give it to me. Let's go. Let's clean everything out. Because I love that feeling that you get in the end. But my dream is always like, how do we show everyone to do that in their daily life? Like, how do we win at the daily detox that's gentle? Because those big oil changes for the body are important, but it's not attainable to everyone to go to India and do panchakarma. So how do we teach everyone to do it in the here and now? So I love that you approached it through food, because food is one of those things I think I actually just take it for granted. I'm Indian. I cook Ayurvedic. That's part of my life. So when I say, make khichdi, make a lentil, I kind of just assume everyone knows how to get it. I'm like, use ghee, obviously. But you're right. It's not obvious to everyone that that's the rhythm by which we should live with our food. And so will you kind of speak into some of your top, recommendations that you have when it comes to cooking that can kind of highlight for people the importance of Ayurvedic cooking and how medicinal the food piece is?
Yeah, I think you're so right about. I love how you called panchakarma an oil change, and it is. But one of the things I've seen over the years is that you have to be ready on the other side of a big detox to pick it up with supportive cooking and supportive food on the other side, or it can actually cause more health problems for you, right?
Yeah.
To do like a huge detox and then retox is not a good idea, So it's like I'm an advocate for sort of learning a lot of these skills before we go for a big detox so that you're coming back into a life that supports the changes, that have happened in your system. And so, people are not going to love this, but eating your home food is always going to be healthier than eating out. That was one of the first things my physician said to me is like no outside food during this process.
Yeah.
It all has to be home cooked. And so I don't only eat home cooked food, but it's definitely the bulk. We go out to eat. It's a fun thing. It's not a part of life that you just eat out. It's like, yay, we're celebrating, or it's Friday night or something like that.
Right.
And so, one of the things that's important is to have it like simple. That's another thing is I think if we look at like a 24-hour cycle and what we eat, we don't really want to introduce like 40 different ingredients in a 24-hour cycle. It's just complicated, So can the meals themselves have like fewer ingredients and still taste good? That's where I'm going with the recipes. And if you open a page in a cookbook and you see a recipe that's got like 5 things in it, you're like, oh, I can do that.
Right.
Maybe you even have that, in your house. So I'm a huge fan of a hot breakfast, some like savory, kind of like a grain breakfast with ghee. If people need more proteins, we can add some hemp seeds. We can add nuts or nut butters. We can sort of like bulk that up, but definitely getting ghee, getting a good fat in there, and a warm thing. It could be a soup too, but like a warm breakfast is definitely going to ground the body as we start moving. And then I'm a huge fan of soups. People will notice that a lot of my recipes are, I call it like a blender soup. So I
Yeah.
have these like blender soup recipes that, like white bean and asparagus that are so easy,
Nice.
just easy to kind of bang it out. And then the thing about soups is that everything's kind of like been cooked together and it's gotten to know each other there in the pot, right? And created this like harmonious combination of ingredients. So then when it goes in your belly, it's not like, 8 different things, some of which are raw, some of which are cooked, some of which are heavy, some of which are light. It's like everything kind of comes together. It's already harmonized through the cooking process. And the spices. Like anytime you see anything online about Ayurveda, the picture has spices in it.
Correct. Yeah.
So
It's the
obviously
most
spices
vibrant,
are huge.
beautiful part.
It is for sure. And the thing to know about spices is that they improve our digestive capacities. And so whether we're looking to like enkindle the fire, sort of get that, build the nice fire in the stove that's gonna, cook the food well in an even way. It's not too hot, it's not coming and going. The spices that we use will help that fire, and also help with the chemical digestion, the breakdown in the small intestine and the absorption of food, because we're not built of what we eat, we're built of what we digest.
True.
And so it's that food juice, that's created in the stomach and small intestine that then goes out and becomes the tissue of the body. And so spices come in as this alchemy to get the food from the point that you chew it and you have a little tea and you swallow it, then there's this thing happening in your stomach that's actually paramount to the physical health of your body for months to come. Right. And when you hear it that way, it makes so much sense. You're like, oh, of course, like I am built of what happens in my stomach. Right. So if we can really harmonize that, so there's no like chunks of things that are undigested or byproducts hanging around, excessive acids, excessive amounts of wind, or air, or like sticky fats, that are like globbing onto our channels. So the less of that, the cleaner everything, the car is back to the oil change, right? Like that oil is still looking clear and good and everything's moving and running through the body. And it has to do with what we eat, but it also has to do with our spices, right? That enable the body to really give us that like ideal fuel.
True. No, it's very true. I love how you explain that. I obsess about food. Like a portion of my whole brain is always thinking about food. And if you follow me on social and see my stories, you'll see it. Like I've now tried to temper myself so that I'm not just posting about food all day, but I'm like, okay, what do I get to eat for breakfast? Okay, what's lunch? Okay, how do I add nutrient density? But you're right. Like what a beautiful reminder. I already know that Ayurveda is not smoothie first. We want you to warm the belly in the morning. We don't want to drop icy cold in there. So I avoid a lot of cold things. And I'd love for you to speak into that. But also, what a beautiful reminder about harmony. Because in this day and age, when we talk about perimenopause and menopause, which is the next conversation we're going to get into, we're taught right now high protein. Get your protein in. And so what I have found is when I try to meet protein goals, everything gets disjointed. It's like, okay, your fiber. Okay, now your protein. Okay, but you get to have a healthy carb. Okay, so there's no harmony. And I hate that. Like a disharmonious meal, if that's a word, doesn't feel good going in. And so a lot of times I'm like, screw that. I'm having a proper Indian meal and I will just incorporate the protein in. So today I put boiled eggs cut up into my rajma chawal that I added more spice into and was like, okay, I'm eating rajma chawal. It just happens to have the protein benefits I need additionally. But what I didn't want to do was shovel in boiled eggs to then get to eat the rajma chawal and then somewhere in there add raw fiber, right? So will you kind of speak into that? Because I think most people might not even realize what that disjointed meal is doing for them. And we're taught a lot about protein shakes right now as the main way to get our protein because it's hard to meet the protein goals. And so if you do use a protein powder, do you like use it in the more baked and cooked way or how do you incorporate?
Yeah. Yeah. So, the disjointed meal, I'm so glad you brought that up, Shivani, because I'm watching a lot of people struggle to, as you say, meet protein goals, so it's like you have this meal and then you're like, uh-oh, it wasn't enough protein. So now I'm going to eat this additional thing when they're not hungry.
Right.
They don't want to eat the additional thing, and I think to me, that's like a point. We want to watch that. We want to watch the eating when we're not hungry.
Correct.
Or things that we're not hungry for, and so when we're trying to meet goals that have been numeric goals, that have been externally imposed on this body, it sets us up in a way to not listen to how we feel in that moment, but to try to meet the external goal. I'm not saying that external goals can't be helpful, because I think that they are, and I think that a lot of women, especially, who are, they're tasked with making food for everybody, not just themselves. And that gets complicated because you're like, well, what do I want to eat? But yeah, I'm already cooking for everyone else. So, like, it gotta be simple here. So I think the thing is like, what feels good? Like how does it feel good going in? And so I love your example of you had the hot meal and you added eggs to it, so I do that a lot. I'll do like having soup and I put like fried eggs on it,
right,
on top of the soup, and I do a lot of legumes. I'm like built of beans, but that's hard. It's hard. And in Ayurveda, we have this sort of not rule, but like a thing that's true about beans, which is that the smaller the bean, the easier it breaks down. So that's why, you brought up lentils earlier. So we do a lot of pulses, like the mung beans, the lentils, and adzuki beans, pretty small. That works really well. And I do a lot of the soups where I blend it, so it comes like smooth, so there's like vegetables and legume and broth, and then I sort of blend that up. And that to me is a very harmonious thing. And maybe I stick a boiled egg on it, or a fried egg on it, or that kind of thing. We do a lot of eggs in our house to get the protein happening. I do a lot of tahini. Tahini is like, I'll make a sauce, with tahini and lemon, sesame butter, that can go on top of savory things. I do like a sweet treat that's tahini and maple syrup. And I'll add herbs and superfoods to that, like moringa or ashwagandha, and make this little like paste.
Okay.
That I just eat off the spoon.
Okay.
It's in the women's health book. I call it my Kate's tahini maple treat.
Awesome.
It's like, I'm not baking, I'm not cooking, but I'll put protein powder in that.
Nice.
I get this question from my community all the time, as I'm sure you do, about proteins. And so I did a podcast on protein recently where I explained how I do use a grass-fed whey protein. And when I use vegan proteins, they don't do the same thing. Yeah, it's like there's some amino acids in the dairy, I think, that are because what happens to me is my nails get weird when I'm not getting enough protein. My nails will get really soft. Okay. And if I use a vegan protein, they don't change, but if I use a whey protein, they get strong.
Wow.
Yeah, so that to me is and though in Ayurvedic anatomy, that ties back to your bones, right? Your bone tissue, and that is, seeing my father the way he aged, like, I know bones are a thing in my constitution, so I'm really on that. And I get I only would use a grass-fed, in a grass-fed way, and I don't use it all the time. See, this is the thing, Shivani, is I think we can lean into supplements, but we still need food.
Of course.
Yeah. So it's like I'm thinking if I'm having whey protein every day, I'm like, why do we need to do this? Right. Like, why do we need this every day? What are we not taking time to eat that would fit that bill, So when I do the protein, to avoid the cold thing, I do a lot of blender activity where I put just water. And again, I want to keep it simple because I am using this protein as a supplement. It's not, I don't think of it like a food as much as I think of it like an herb. that, I want to make sure that it's digesting. So if I'm throwing a bunch of bananas and peanut butter and all these like really sticky, heavy things in with the protein, that is going to sit in the gut, especially if there's ice. It's the opposite of digestive fire is ice.
Right.
And so these smoothies are going to really sit in the gut. And so I avoid adding like dairy to it. There's no yogurt or milk. There's just the whey.
Yeah.
And I don't put a bunch of sweetener in it, because then for me, I'll get attached to this like delicious thing that's like sugary and want that. I have a sugar tooth for sure. So I don't add sweetener. So it's water and chia seed.
Okay.
So I do get my kind of demulcents and my fiber from chia seed.
Perfect.
So I soak, 2 tablespoons of chia seeds in water, and that goes in the blender. And then the whey goes in the blender. And then I'll do a digestive spice. Perfect. So it could be cardamom, cinnamon, ginger. Or my cookbook has like a sweet spice mix, a couple different options. So I have this little mix, with some of the fun spices that go in there. Nice. And I will just blend that up, literally just the spices, the whey, the chia, and water.
Perfect.
And it's good. Like it's good. And it's not a meal replacement. It's not like a huge towering creamy thing. It's still very tasty, but say I have oatmeal for breakfast, I'll have a cup of this with it. And it's not huge. It's probably like 8 to 10 ounces. I also kind of condense it because I feel like if I start waterlogging, my gut there, that's not great either. So I condense the amount of liquid in there. So it really goes in a more dense form, because when your body's looking for protein from an Ayurvedic perspective, it's looking for earth element, which is dense. Yeah. It's one of its main qualities is density. And so if something all poofy and frothy goes in your belly, but it's supposed to be earth element, it's supposed to be protein, it's very confusing, because your body's like, no, earth is meat. Yeah. Earth is like, it's dense, it's heavy, it's chewy. It's that, that kind of a thing that your stomach knows when that's in there. And it's like, oh yeah, all hands on deck. We've got some dense food here,
We have to break it down.
Think that, like we think in Ayurveda, we talk about the qualities of the food and like how it presents to your taste and how it feels in your belly, And so I think it's important when we do protein that it is dense.
Yeah.
And with some of the protein supplement stuff, it can get really dry, like a bar, that has like Rice Crisps in it and things.
True.
And you take something like heavy that requires a lot of digestive juice, and you dry it out, that's a problematic combination. It's not harmonious, right? So I try to stay away from the protein bars, and I just do this whey thing that I've described to you. And sometimes I do it before I go to the gym. As someone in my mid to late 40s, I'm definitely noticing I can't work out on an empty stomach like I used to. It's true. Yeah. So I'm having this kind of dense whey protein thing, and it's not like I'm burping it up the whole time. It's not disturbing me while I'm working out. I don't do it before yoga, but definitely the gym. If I'm doing like weight training, I will have that before, or I'll have a date with a spoonful of tahini on it. That's my other like pre-workout snack that digests really well.
I like it. A question I have is I'm always willing to try a trend. I'm always willing to try like, oh, you're saying that's the science right now around perimenopause, menopause? Sure. I'm open. I love trying everything that's out there and just seeing for myself what happens. How does that feel? Because I can't be an informed practitioner if I don't understand something. And I love health so much and go to so many health conferences. So if the whole world for years now is saying high protein, I was like, okay, I'll try. But I can honestly tell you it doesn't work for me. It's not balanced for my constitution to try to be that extreme in that arena. And so I've really had a conflict with it. Like I can force a lot of things. I'm a pitta. I can just battle in and lock in and do. And my body has said, can you just be nice? Like, what are you doing? I have to have a digestive fire ready for all of this all the time while you work at 200 miles an hour and you're a mom and everything else. Really? That's what we're going to do. And now I'm doing a stool test and I'm seeing the repercussions. And I'm like, oh, it didn't work out for you, did it? And so I just think that it's so beautiful in Ayurveda how we talk about, look, you have a constitution. We're not all meant to do a particular trend that's current. Yeah, there's
Right.
science behind why bodybuilders do these things and all that, but we can't extrapolate all the what my friends are now calling bro science, all the science on men's health and weightlifting and bodybuilding and all those things, and then just say, hey, all of us need to do this. Yes,
Right.
in the world of longevity, do we need to do certain things that we've now come to understand from science that are different than what we always knew? Sure. If we talk about weightlifting now and bone density, but I also think Ayurveda always had more balanced viewpoints for these things, and we still aged well and aged gracefully and aged for longevity. Don't you feel that way?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I think moderation, simple word, but not something that we find in the trends.
No.
The way that Americans respond to health trends is so interesting,
Yeah.
right? Because suddenly everyone thinks, oh my God, that's what I have to be doing. I'm not doing it, and this is bad, and so I need to start doing that, and I need to do it like all the way.
Right.
So yeah, as I get older, I'm aware that I need a little more food.
Sure.
I can't skip meals like I
No.
used to. I can't work out on an empty stomach. Protein, definitely. I need more like earth element. I need more dense, like tissue building food. And I do have a light constitution. So, right. It's of the essence for me. As I get older, it's like I'm the one who's gonna lose weight. I'm going to be the really skinny old lady, and I don't want to fall down and break my hip, So I'm like already trying to build the firmness of the muscle and like keep that tissue firm, alive. But I'm super moderate about it.
Yeah.
I'm not like I don't really have big strength goals. I'm not counting how much protein I'm eating. And when I look around at the trend, all I see is everyone trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And we're all in different bodies.
Right.
Some people have more earth element to begin with, and so are gonna be okay and don't need to, move in the direction of X number of grams of protein a day. Maybe that's their amount is 20 grams less than someone like me.
Right.
Because of the way their body is built. Their body's already got tissue and it likes to have the tissue and it's going to hang on to it.
Yeah.
You know?
True.
Yeah.
True.
That's what I wish everyone could hear from Ayurveda is
Yeah.
that, hey, these health trends, like there's efficacy there and there's a reason that this is coming out, but like, let's make this work for a person's constitution.
Absolutely. And sometimes we don't realize that when we're battling so hard against ourselves, there's a reason. Like there's a reason it's a battle. And so Ayurveda taught us you have your dosha, you have your constitution. Honoring that constitution comes first. There's no way any modern health trend actually fits all three doshas perfectly. There's no way. There's too
Right.
much variation in the elements. So I always evaluate it like, okay, it used to be Atkins, then it was South Beach, then it was vegan, then it was raw vegan. I've tried raw vegan. It's rough.
Me too. Me too. That was whew.
Yeah, I've grown up vegetarian. So that one's always easy to me. I do eat eggs and dairy, thank goodness, or the protein would be hard to reach. And then now carnivore, like the extremes are just so wide. There's no way all of us can be raw vegan, and there's no way all of us can be carnivore. That's just not possible if you understand the doshas and the constitutions. And so when I was looking through your book earlier, and I saw a whole section on perimenopause and menopause, I thought, the current trend is HRT, the whole conversation. And I actually find that conversation really exciting around menopause and how the studies that were published were totally false and wrong in the way they were formed and the results that were extrapolated, and how HRT can be a really effective tool. And as I watched that happen, I'm like, okay, thank you. I love toolboxes coming back online for women's health. I am a big fan of new science and current science and real studies on women's health. I'm also a big fan of fusing two worlds. That's why I created Fusionary. It's a fusing of two worlds, modern and ancient. So if modern is saying, hey, when you're depleted, I can give you progesterone. When your testosterone is tanking, I can give you that. When you're in perimenopause and you're on this roller coaster, let me give you some supports to build a baseline. I think that's awesome. And I'm doing those things right now. But I'm also, as soon as I get the support, I take a step back and say, okay, could you have gotten there naturally as well? Could you support naturally from the base? So you hold that result with that much more strength and you're not fully reliant on a pill or an injection for the result. Could you holistically support the body? Because if this is a roller coaster, your natural support will hold that fluctuation differently than a medication. Or as you're transitioning, based on your own family history and body type, I have one of those body types that I have to be really nice to myself. Like this body requires a lot of love and a lot of self-care just to function. So I can just imagine what the menopause journey could look like. And so looking forward into that, that's why I'm paying so much attention to it. I'm like, I do not want 51 to 90 to be painful. I want it to feel beautiful and great. So can you share with us and the audience today some of what you talked about here in the book around perimenopause, menopause, and how Ayurveda is actually the most beautiful synergistic support to either take alongside HRT or to use in conjunction with, or to use in a natural, simpler, moderate way while you're potentially considering HRT or wherever you're at in the journey. Because a lot of the women I talk to say, look, all these ideas out there sound great. They're expensive. My doctor isn't giving that to me. I don't know if I want to do that. There's still a lot of confusion. And so one thing I think we can all agree on is if Mother Earth has given us spices and herbs and foods that will help us build that balance we're craving, why don't we reach into that toolkit first?
Yeah. And I think, the thing about perimenopause that we experience to be true is that it's a lot of fluctuation, right? So you see how the hormones are they're not in a state of regular cycle anymore, right? They're not moving through this predictable rhythm, and bodies love rhythm.
Yeah.
All the things that happen, you're breathing, your menstrual cycle, you're pooping, you're sleeping, they're all kind of in this like clock, they're all rolling along in this rhythmic fashion. And, when the hormones start changing, it's like we lose our rhythm. So it's like, imagine when you're trying to have a dance party and you're just like, wow, I just like can't get down to this song, so you're feeling like all these women are feeling like I can't get down to this song all the time, the song being like my life. And that's a horrible feeling, especially when you feel like you kind of had it, everything was going well, and so that's what I'm seeing. And so if irregularity and fluctuation is the hallmark of this change in our, in that time of life, then we want to introduce rhythm, like circadian rhythm becomes really important. So the things that we're looking at for circadian rhythm is not only about bedtime and wake up time, but also about when we eat, when we work, and when we relax. So I've been talking about essential balance. Like at the heart of Ayurveda is two groups of opposite qualities, those which build the body and those which cleanse or detox the body. And so and hormones are like that too. We have the ones that build, the ones that make you fall asleep. And then we have the things that get you moving, and so it's like, there's this balance that's always happening. And that's why we sleep and then we wake up, and we have times where we're active and times where we're mellow. We have times where we're hungry and times where we're digesting and we're not hungry, so we want all these things, we're constantly like kicking the ball back and forth, between these two opposites. And it's that essential balance of, let's say, cleansing or detoxification and nourishment, or of activity and rest. That's the essential balance. And I think it's difficult for a lot of women today to find that balance between activity and rest. And even when your body's resting, your mind still might be moving,
Totally.
So I have found it really helpful to introduce daily rhythms, and it doesn't have to be perfect, because I know people get overwhelmed by this concept right away, right? Where they're like, oh my God, all day long they're, thinking what time is it? And this has to happen. And there's alarms going off all the time. But it starts with just like one touchstone. Right. So it's let's say we're going to try to wake up around the same time. And I've experienced, I don't know if you find this, but I've experienced in my body, I can get away with a swing of like an hour or 90 minutes and I'm still in the window.
Right. An hour.
Yeah. So I can like get up at 6, I can get up at 7, but if I get up at like 8, everything's wacky. My sleep, the sleep that night will be all weird, So it's just that. And it's governing when you get tired and when you fall asleep anyway, So then I'll invite people to pick a meal a day that they're going to be regular about.
Okay.
Just because this is, I think, really important for this perimenopause, menopause conversation, is the nourishment of the body, because it's a marked time where our bodies, they start to move towards the light qualities and away from the dense qualities. And estrogen is that which brings the density and the moisture and the ushy-gushiness to the body. And so as we naturally have less of that, we do want to bring in ushy-gushy qualities in other ways. And this is where the protein comes in, because it's dense, right? So it sort of grounds the body, stabilizes the system.
Right.
And so one of the things that can be really problematic in perimenopause is eating in an irregular way. Yeah. Right. So where the food's happening at like, very inconsistent times, or you're eating one day and you're not eating the next day, or you're skipping this or you're skipping that. And I know it can be, for a lot of listeners, they're probably thinking, Jesus, that's a lot to take on, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But so I'll say, let's pick one.
Yeah.
Let's pick one meal, the easiest one, and let's be regular about that. Sure. And then your whole appetite, your digestion, and your natural 24-hour detox gets tethered by that routine. And so your body has this consistent thread. Your digestive system and your detox system, it's the same system, right? That your ability to detox and nourish in interims in a 24-hour cycle, it's your body, just like our pets are about they don't like to be fed at all the weird times. Sure. They show up in the kitchen at the time. And our body's like that. And so if the appetite shows up in the kitchen and we don't feed it, it's feeding into the imbalance. And if it's going on regularly, then we do start to lose that essential balance. There's no tether for the system at a time when, hormonally speaking, there's no tether. I mean, the change is exponential, right?
It's a huge shift on the body. And it's so beautiful the way you said that, because as we're entering, like you said, the light time, we're entering a Vata season of life. And as we're hitting that dry, light season of air and wind, like talk about the elements of like movement and change. I think what most women are feeling is, I don't want change. I want everything to stay the same. I want to look the same. I want to feel the same. I want the same energy level. My kids are becoming teenagers. That's like 5 times harder than when they were babies. Can someone just hold them at their cute babiness? And then I've got aging parents. Talk about a great stressor to add on top of the pile. So my body's changing. Everyone around me is changing. And everything gets a little harder to kind of control. But isn't it beautiful that Ayurveda teaches, hey, all these rhythms are trying to dysregulate your rhythm, but that's okay. You can build your own thread, your own beautiful rhythm, your circadian rhythm, your digestive rhythm, which will then impact your hormonal rhythm so that you have that give and that cushion again to kind of handle the stressors of life. I think we get so dysregulated in this time and don't catch the importance of this. And then that's just going to dysregulate further.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think, you talk about change. What I think is fabulous about HRT is how it can be used to temper the change, slow it down a little bit, because women's lives are moving at top speed. Just talking with a client earlier today who she had her babies young.
Okay.
So she was like, oh, by the time I hit menopause, my kids are going to be, long gone. So she's like, maybe it'll be easier because
Yeah.
she's not, sandwiched between elderly parents and still kids that need a lot of attention.
Right.
And so your body's undergoing this change, but meanwhile, your life has you kind of packed in, And so I that's where I think if we look at the HRT as something to temper a change, we're not stopping it. It's still going to happen, right? And we want it to happen, but maybe we want to happen in a little more of an incremental way.
Exactly.
And that allows, and during that time, let's say we're doing it for a couple of years, the HRT gives us a couple of years to get our routines going.
Right.
And find your tether and, get that essential balance and feel really like you're connecting to that and you're holding that and you're comfortable with that. Cause that takes time. That takes a couple of years, So I don't want to be the Ayurvedic influencer who's saying, let's only do this the natural way, because sometimes the change, it comes on so fast and there's no space in the life. And I have worked with instilling rhythm in daily lives of so many people for so many years. I've seen how long that takes.
Yeah.
Minimum 6 months before you start to feel comfortable finding a tether. Sure. and live and not feeling like in order to be tethered in a rhythm, it's like the biggest pain in your ass.
Right. No,
right?
totally.
But something instead that you enjoy and that's like natural for you now.
Yeah. And truly, as Ayurvedic practitioners, it's not if. Ayurveda teaches moderation, and Ayurveda is a Vedic philosophy. And as a part of a Vedic philosophy, it's very accepting. Like, I wasn't raised to believe anything was right or wrong. I mean, of course, there are some wrongs, murder and those things, but in general, it's both and. It's can't we have both sides of a coin? So that's why I'm so fascinated right now by the functional medicine, longevity, and biohacking space. And every time I'm looking at it and getting into it, and I'm like, well, you're actually just saying what Ayurveda said. You're just developing new tech to achieve what Ayurveda said. You're just giving me a support because Ayurveda does take a little time to implement. It is a lifestyle, but what you're doing is you're enhancing the result of my already living the Ayurveda lifestyle. And I appreciate what you said, which is sometimes we need to have incremental change. Many women had their kids in their 30s. I had mine from 30 to 33. And then many of them are having kids in their 40s. So to hit menopause at full throttle with young or mid-aged or older kids is it's such a challenge that I think we need we need to have no guilt around whichever toolkit we reach into. And I love that your mission and my mission is to share Ayurveda with the world and share, hey, this is an incredible toolkit. It has so much wisdom in it. I think it's even more beautiful for women's health because I don't know about everyone else, but it saves me. Ayurveda saves me all the time. If I feel imbalanced, just live the Ayurveda lifestyle. If I don't feel well, just reach into the Ayurveda toolkit. If something changes, because I'm 45 now, I'm like, what would Ayurveda say? Oh, circadian rhythm. Okay. So I'm curious as you've gone into this book on women's health, what have you seen have been some of your favorite tools that really create that ease? Is it ghee for digestion? Because we need that nourishment. Is it addressing ama and toxins? Is it a true loving of Agni and the digestive fire of the gut? Where have you kind of seen that there's these gaps in women's lives and we need to bring those concepts forward to them to show like, hey, this is the tool you're really asking for. Let me show you how Mother Earth can give it to you.
Yeah. I've really landed on nourishment and digestion as the central story in women's health. And I think what's interesting about the transition as I wrote the book, I went sort of from periods, fertility, gestation, postpartum, and then we have this whole other thing happens, so I went through the whole arc and all the changes and all the functions, that the generative system is doing in a lifetime. And when we hit the perimenopause time, what I think a lot of people are noticing is that what they digest well is different now.
Correct.
right? And like what you want to eat or what you crave, it's different now.
Yeah.
And I definitely want everyone to know that that's normal.
Right.
Right? It's normal that like our doshas are changing, our constitution's kind of changing. We're moving into that Vata time of life. So raw things and cold things are not going to digest the way they used to. That big salad might start to just feel like, whoa, I am like so windy right now, or unsatisfied. Like it's common to feel unsatisfied by food that's served cold.
Yeah.
Because it makes your body kind of contract. We want to put you in like the cosmic bathtub of nourishment, and so those things are, they're warm, and there's natural fats, good fats that digest well. So what I started to look at is, you mentioned ama, and toxicity and sort of digestive dysfunction, which is also normal, totally normal. You have to change the oil in your car. You don't just drive that thing, right? Decade after decade. So it's also totally normal to, get a little gunked up and feel like you need to change the oil. It doesn't have to be a whole thing where you go to India, for a month and do a panchakarma. I'm an advocate, and I have been for decades, of a seasonal cleanse, which is part of Ayurvedic flow. So we have our 24-hour cycle, but we also have an annual cycle, where we undergo some moderate cleanse, where we still are eating food, because we also don't want to really shock the system, especially during menopause transition. So it's, something moderate, where we're eating warm food, we're working with spices and teas, trying to get all that stuff in the body, the herbs, herbs and spices. And a periodic detox allows the body to manage imbalances that are starting to like get cooked up in there, so things get acidic, or things get gassy, or things get like sticky, clumpy. And we take a little like step back, every 6 months or so. And we just kind of allow the body to like do some janitorial work, sort that stuff out. And then we emerge on the other side of a gentle detox, more able to digest our food well. So when we were talking about the need to get, proteins into the tissues and good fats into the tissues and channels, because we do dry out, as we get older, the importance of our metabolic fire in doing that. So it brings us right back to where we started, Shivani, where we were talking about, the food goes in the mouth and then what happens?
Yeah.
Right. So I really found that taking on, and I give clear instruction how to do like a home cleanse, so it's something that doesn't have to cost a bunch of money, you don't need to all the things, and you just undergo this little, week long, let's say, period. And then the second thing that happens is the most important. It's the nourishment. The cleanse in Ayurveda, the cleanse is really there as a precursor to the deep nourishment that comes on the other side. So once you heal the gut and you get the metabolic fires cranking, we're going to digest that food. And so all the great things that we're all trying to do and get into our bodies will be transmuted, in a nice, clean way. And our tissues will sing, with the joy of what's going in. So we can talk all day about the herbs that are good for menopause, right? And the foods that are good for your protein. But if it's not working its way into the tissues properly, then it's really of no use.
True. Thank you for that reminder. You're making me crave a spring cleanse. I'm like, yes, I know I need one. It sounds so good. Just like we talk about spring cleaning, everyone around me is like, I'm spring cleaning. I'm like, absolutely. And let's spring clean ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's do both.
Yeah.
Well, Kate, I feel like I could talk to you all day, and I know I could, because we very much think alike. And I'm so happy that you came onto the podcast today. I'm so happy. I feel like we could talk for many hours. This is Kate's book, Everyday Ayurveda for Women's Health. I can't wait to make some of your recipes. They look stunning. Because I grew up Indian, I already cook Indian food and so many Ayurvedic recipes. But what I love is you have other options in here, like a great way to add variety in with these soups and stews and beautiful dishes. And honestly, I need it simple too. Like I did buy a cookbook recently that was so cool. And then I didn't own half the ingredients. And I was like, who has time to go source half of these ingredients?
Right.
but I just love these beautiful photos and beautiful recipes. And I love that you're so into the food. So are there any last thoughts that you want to share about perimenopause, menopause, women's health, and Ayurveda before we wrap, or any final message?
I mean, I think the thing that I've been wanting to say from the beginning of starting that book was it's natural. It's so much of what we're experiencing is natural, and that it's not about fixing it. It's just about, it's a life passage. It's an experience, that we have that teaches us more about ourselves and how we live in the world and what we're here to do. I think that's great. And I so enjoy talking with you. I love how into it you are, and that you eat up the research and that you try all the things. I just think it's so cool. And I'm really grateful to share this conversation about women's health with you and with your community. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me. So share where everyone can find your book and where they can find you to learn more about all that you teach.
Yeah, so obviously you can get the book anywhere you get books. But if you go to healwithkate.org, you can find all 4 of the books there all on one page. You find my podcast, and you can find out where I am doing what, when, and look at the courses that I teach online as well.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today, Kate. Loved sharing with you and talking with you all about Ayurvedic wisdom. And thank you everyone for listening to the Fusionary Health podcast. You can learn more about this podcast at shivanigupta.com, where this podcast is housed, and all sorts of info on Ayurveda as well. And I'll see you next week for the next episode. Thanks for joining me for this episode. Check out our sponsor, Fusionary Formulas, the potent turmeric supplement used by doctors around the U.S. for patients with pain and inflammation. www.fusionaryformulas.com. I'm your host, Dr. Shivani Gupta. For more, visit shivanigupta.com. Subscribe to this podcast in Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Click the follow button or subscribe in any of the apps that you use. That's all I've got for you on the Fusionary Health podcast this week. You have the power to transform your health and achieve vibrant health starting today.